Evening, sir. I need to see some ID.
Good evening, officer. May I ask what this is about?
Suspicious activity reported. Just show me the ID now.
What kind of suspicious?
Look, you're loitering here after hours. ID or you're coming with me.
Officer, I have rights. You need probable cause.
That's it. Hands behind your back. You're under arrest for non-compliance.
In the quiet outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia, where the humid summer nights carried the faint scent of magnolias and distant barbecue smoke, an elderly black man named Marcus Johnson stood alone in the dimly lit parking lot of O'Malley's bar. Marcus was a fixture in this neighborhood, a gentle soul in his late 60s with salt and pepper hair cropped short, deep-set eyes that crinkled warmly whenever he smiled, and a slight limp from an old war injury he never mentioned unless someone asked. His skin was a rich mahogany tone, lined by decades of hard work and harder memories. He wore a faded blue janitor's uniform, the name patch sewn on crookedly over his heart reading Marcus. For more than 20 years he had cleaned that bar, mopping sticky floors, wiping down scarred wooden counters, emptying ashtrays, and quietly listening to the troubles of patrons who called him Old Mark. He was the man who always had a dry joke ready or a patient ear for anyone who needed to talk. On his days off, he volunteered at the local Veterans Center, helping younger service members figure out paperwork and benefits, drawing from his own time in Vietnam, where he had earned a Purple Heart for dragging 2 wounded squad mates to safety under heavy fire. Tonight, just past midnight, Marcus had finished his shift. He leaned against his rust-spotted 1998 Ford pickup, fishing for his keys under the weak yellow glow of a single flickering street lamp. The lot was nearly empty, only a handful of cars left from the last stragglers inside. The night felt calm, ordinary, peaceful. He did not know that this ordinary evening was about to become anything but. A white patrol car eased into the lot, headlights sweeping slowly across the asphalt until they pinned Marcus in their glare. The engine idled for a long moment before Officer Ryan Thompson stepped out. Ryan was in his mid-30s, tall and broad-shouldered, with a military-style buzz cut and sharp blue eyes that never seemed to soften. His uniform fit snug across his chest and arms, the kind of fit that suggested many hours in the precinct gym. He carried himself with the brisk confidence of someone who believed the streets belonged to him after dark. Ryan had grown up in a tidy subdivision 30 miles north of the city, raised on stories about trouble spots and keeping order. Colleagues called him no-nonsense. Others used different words. He approached with measured steps, boots crunching gravel, one hand resting lightly on his belt near the flashlight and the holster. "Evening, sir," he said, voice flat and official. He lifted his badge into the light so the metal caught the lamp's glow. "I need to see some identification." Marcus looked up slowly. He had lived long enough to recognize the tone, the posture, the way the request was not really a request. He kept his hands visible, keys still dangling from his fingers. "Good evening, officer. May I ask what this is about?" Ryan did not smile. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in the area. Standard procedure." "ID, please." Marcus tilted his head slightly, studying the younger man. "What kind of suspicious activity, if you don't mind me asking? I've worked at this bar for over 20 years. Everybody here knows me." The officer's jaw tightened just enough to notice. "Doesn't matter. I'm asking for ID. You can either show it or we can continue this conversation at the station." Marcus felt the familiar weight settle in his chest, not panic but a bone-deep weariness. He had worn a different uniform once, one that demanded respect. He had bled for the same country whose officers now looked at him like he did not belong on this quiet street. "Officer, I have rights. You need a reason, probable cause, to demand my identification. I'm not refusing to cooperate, I'm asking for the basis." Ryan took one step closer. His voice dropped lower, edged with impatience. "You're standing alone in a parking lot after midnight. That's enough reason. Show me the ID right now or you're coming with me." Marcus exhaled through his nose. "I respectfully decline without a lawful basis." For a heartbeat, the only sound was the low buzz of the street lamp and the faint thump of music leaking from the bar. Then Ryan reached for the cuffs on his belt. "Hands behind your back. You're under arrest for failure to identify and obstructing an officer." Marcus did not resist. He had seen too many videos, read too many headlines. He simply turned, slow and deliberate, placing his hands behind him. The metal clicked cold against his wrists. Ryan guided him toward the cruiser with firm pressure on his elbow, not brutal but not gentle either. Marcus's limp made the walk awkward. Each step sent a small jolt up his bad leg. As they passed the bar's front door, it swung open. 2 regulars, Jimmy, a retired mechanic, and Rosa, who bartended weekends, stepped halfway out. "Hey, that's old Mark," Jimmy called. "What's he done?" "Police business," Ryan answered without turning. "Go back inside." Rosa's voice rose. "He's the janitor. He locks up every night." Ryan ignored her. He opened the rear door of the cruiser and eased Marcus inside, careful enough that the old man's head did not strike the frame, but quick enough that the message was clear. No more conversation. At the station, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Marcus sat on a hard bench while they processed him. An officer, a younger black woman named Sergeant Lisa Carter, took one look at the veteran ID card that finally came out of Marcus's wallet and froze. She read the details twice. U.S. Army Specialist Eminence 4, 1st Infantry Division, Vietnam, 1968-69, Purple Heart, Bronze Star with V device for valor. She glanced at Marcus, then at the report Ryan had started typing. "Sir," she said quietly, "you're telling me this man dragged 2 wounded soldiers a quarter mile under fire and you arrested him for standing in a parking lot?" Ryan shrugged, eyes on his screen. He refused to comply. Lisa's mouth pressed into a thin line. She did not say anything else right then, but she made sure the body camera footage from Ryan's vest was flagged for immediate supervisory review. Marcus spent 4 hours in holding before they released him on his own recognizance. When he finally walked out into the gray pre-dawn, his wrists were red and his shoulders ached. He caught a rideshare home because his truck was still impounded. In his small bungalow on Peach Street, he sat in the worn recliner his wife Ella used to love, rubbing his wrists and staring at the framed photo on the mantle. Him in dress greens, 19 years old, smiling like the war would never touch him. He was not angry, not yet, he was tired. But somewhere beneath the tiredness, a quiet resolve was taking root. He would file a complaint. Not for revenge, for change. Outside, the first light of morning crept over Atlanta. And in precinct break rooms and group chats, people were already watching the body cam clip that someone had quietly copied before it could be buried. The video showed everything. The empty lot, the elderly man leaning on his truck, the officer's clipped demands, the refusal to explain, the cuffs snapping on without a struggle. By sunrise, the first shares appeared online. Marcus Johnson did not know it yet, but the night that started with a single flashlight beam was about to become something much larger. The next morning, Marcus woke to sunlight slicing through the blinds of his small bedroom. His wrists still carried faint purple lines from the cuffs, and his bad leg throbbed worse than usual after the awkward walk to the cruiser. He moved slowly, making coffee the way Ella used to, strong, black, no sugar. The house was quiet except for the tick of the old wall clock and the distant hum of traffic on Peachtree. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at the same chipped mug he'd used every morning for 30 years, wondering if he should call his son in Charlotte or his daughter in Savannah. He decided against it. They had their own lives, their own worries. He didn't want to be the burden who phoned with bad news. Across town, in a cramped apartment near Grant Park, 23-year-old barista and part-time activist named Aisha Reynolds opened her phone while the espresso machine hissed behind the counter. A notification popped up from a local group chat she'd joined years ago, mostly young black folks, some veterans, some teachers, all tired of the same stories repeating. The message was simple. "Y'all see this yet?" Attached was a 30-second clip. Aisha tapped play. The footage was crystal clear, pulled straight from Officer Thompson's body camera. It opened on Marcus standing beside his truck, keys in hand, posture relaxed but alert. Ryan's voice came through tinny but unmistakable. "I need to see some identification." Marcus's calm reply followed, polite, measured. Then the escalation, Ryan stepping closer, the demand repeated, the refusal to explain, the sudden snap of cuffs. No raised voices from Marcus. No sudden moves, just an old man turning slowly, hands behind his back, limping slightly as he was led away. The clip ended with the cruiser door closing and Ryan's gloved hand on the roof. Aisha's thumb hovered over the share button. She watched it again. Something about the way Marcus held himself, shoulders back despite the age, and the limp hit her hard. She knew men like him. Her own grandfather had been one. Quiet strength, medals in a drawer he never showed off, stories he only told when the bourbon was flowing. She shared the video to her story with 3 words, "This is wrong." By noon, the clip had jumped platforms. Someone posted it to a neighborhood Facebook group with the caption, "They arrested old Mark from O'Malley's last night." "For what?" Comments flooded in. Regulars from the bar recognized him instantly. "That's the guy who fixes the jukebox when it jams for free. He gave my kid a ride home in the rain once. He's a Vietnam vet, Purple Heart and everything." A retired nurse who'd known Marcus for decades typed, "I've never seen that man raise his voice in 40 years. This is disgusting." The video crossed over to X around 1 p.m. A local journalist with a modest following retweeted it, adding context. Bodycam footage shows Atlanta PD officer detaining 68-year-old black veteran Marcus Johnson after he asked for legal basis of ID request. Johnson, a Purple Heart recipient, was released hours later with no charges. Department has not commented. Hashtags appeared organically. Number justice for Marcus, number stop the profiling, number Atlanta PD. Marcus still had no idea. He was at the hardware store buying light bulbs when his phone buzzed with a text from Jimmy, the retired mechanic who'd seen the arrest. "Mark, you famous now, check your messages." Marcus frowned, opened the app, and saw the notifications piling up, dozens, then hundreds. He clicked the first link and watched himself being handcuffed on a stranger's timeline. His stomach twisted. Not from shame, he had done nothing wrong, but from the sudden exposure. He'd spent a lifetime keeping his head down, doing the work, staying out of trouble. Now his face was everywhere. Back at the precinct, Captain Alina Morales sat in her office with the blinds half closed, replaying the same body cam footage on her laptop. She was a 22-year veteran of the department, Latina, no nonsense in her own way, but fair. She'd known Marcus for years. He'd cleaned the community room at the precinct Christmas toy drive more than once, refusing payment. She paused the video at the moment Ryan said, "You're standing alone in a parking lot after midnight. That's enough reason." She shook her head. "That's not enough reason," she muttered to the empty room she called internal affairs. "Pull Thompson's last 6 months of stops, cross-reference demographics, and get me every complaint filed against him in the past 2 years." Then she summoned Ryan. He arrived looking freshly showered, uniform crisp, expression neutral. "Captain, sit." She turned the screen toward him. "Explain this." Ryan leaned forward slightly. "Subject was loitering in a closed business parking lot after hours. I made contact, requested ID per department policy on field interviews. He refused. I advised him multiple times. He continued to refuse. I effected the arrest for failure to identify under state statute." Morales tapped the desk once. "The lot belongs to O'Malley's bar. He's the janitor. He had just locked up. Did you run the plates on the truck before you approached?" Ryan hesitated half a second. "Not yet. I was going to after. You didn't know who he was," she cut in. "You saw a black man alone at night and decided that was suspicious enough. No call for service. No 911 hang-up. No witness complaint. Just your gut." Ryan's jaw worked. "Captain, we can't wait for something to happen before we act. Proactive policing. Proactive policing doesn't mean harassing a decorated veteran in his own workplace parking lot." She slid a printout across the desk. "Marcus Johnson, Specialist 4th Class U.S. Army, Bronze Star with V-Device, Purple Heart, 2 Combat Tour, Community Volunteer, no criminal record, not even a parking ticket." Ryan glanced at the paper but didn't pick it up. He still refused to comply. Morales leaned back. "You're suspended, effective immediately. Administrative leave pending full investigation. Turn in your badge and service weapon before you leave the building." Ryan's face flushed red at the neck. "Captain, this is an order," she finished. "Out." He stood slowly, unclipped his badge, set it on the desk with deliberate care. The metal clinked once. He walked out without another word. Word of the suspension spread through the precinct like wildfire. Some officers nodded quietly. Thompson had a reputation for being aggressive on stops. Others grumbled about politics and woke pressure. But the body cam clip kept circulating, racking up views. By evening, a local news station picked it up. The anchor, a young woman named Keisha Banks, led with the headline, "Atlanta veteran arrested in parking lot, body cam video sparks outrage." That night, Marcus finally answered his phone. It was his daughter, Simone. Her voice cracked on the first word. "Daddy, I saw the video. Are you okay?" He closed his eyes, leaned against the kitchen counter. "I'm fine, baby girl. Just a misunderstanding." "It's not a misunderstanding," she said fiercely. "They had no right." He smiled despite himself. "I know, but I'm home now. That's what matters." She cried quietly for a moment. "I'm booking a flight. I'll be there tomorrow." "You don't have to. I'm coming," she repeated. "And don't argue." After they hung up, Marcus walked to the mantel and picked up the framed photo of himself in uniform. 19 years old, skinny, smiling like the future was wide open. He touched the glass once, set it back down. Then he sat in Ella's old recliner and let the quiet settle over him again. Outside, Atlanta kept moving. Cars rolled past on wet streets. Neon signs flickered. Phones buzzed with shares and comments and outrage. The clip had been viewed more than 200,000 times in less than 24 hours. And somewhere in a quiet suburb north of the city, Ryan Thompson sat alone in his living room, staring at a muted television. His badge was gone. His gun was locked in evidence. His phone kept lighting up with messages from colleagues, half support, half distance. He didn't answer any of them. He just sat there, replaying the encounter in his head, searching for the moment it went wrong. He couldn't find it. But the city was already deciding for him. By the second morning after the arrest, the story of Marcus Johnson had escaped the quiet corners of Atlanta and begun to spread like summer lightning across the South and beyond. The body cam clip had surpassed 1 million views on X alone. News vans parked outside O'Malley's bar before the doors even opened. Reporters knocked on neighbors' doors along Peach Street, asking the same questions. "Did you know Marcus? What kind of man is he?" The answers came back the same every time, soft, steady, almost embarrassed at how obvious it seemed. "He's the kindest person I know. He helped my mom fix her porch after the storm, no charge. He never misses a Veterans Day parade, walks the whole route even with that limp." Inside the bar that afternoon, the regulars gathered early. The jukebox stayed silent for once. Jimmy, the mechanic, sat at the counter nursing a coffee instead of his usual beer. Rosa wiped the same spot on the bar over and over, eyes red. The owner, Patrick O'Malley, a burly Irishman in his 60s who'd inherited the place from his father, stood behind them with arms crossed, staring at the television mounted above the liquor shelves. A local station was running the clip on loop during the noon news block. The anchor's voice filled the room. Community leaders are calling for a full independent review of the Atlanta Police Department's practices following the arrest of a decorated Vietnam veteran. Patrick finally spoke. We're closing early tonight, fundraiser. All tips go to Marcus's legal defense, whatever he needs. No one argued. By evening, the bar was packed not with drinkers but with people bringing casseroles, envelopes of cash, handwritten cards. A GoFundMe someone started without asking Marcus hit $10,000 in hours. The description was simple: help old Mark fight back, he's fought enough already. Marcus spent the day avoiding the cameras. He stayed inside with the blinds drawn, phone on silent. His daughter Simone arrived from Savannah just after lunch, letting herself in with the spare key she'd kept since college. She found him in the kitchen, staring at a half-finished crossword puzzle he hadn't touched in years. She hugged him so tight he grunted, "Daddy, you don't have to go through this alone." "I know," he said quietly. "But I hate the fuss." She pulled back, eyes fierce. "They made the fuss, not you." That evening, Simone convinced him to step outside for fresh air. They walked the short block to the small park at the end of the street. Kids played basketball under the lights. An older couple sat on a bench feeding pigeons. A few people recognized Marcus and nodded respectfully, no staring, no questions, just quiet acknowledgement. One boy, maybe 12, paused mid-dribble and said, "Hey, Mr. Johnson, my granddad says you're a hero." Marcus managed a small smile. "Your granddad's too kind." Back home, Simone showed him the messages pouring in. Emails from veterans organizations offering pro bono lawyers. Texts from strangers. "I served in Iraq. What happened to you happened to too many of us when we came home. Stay strong." A retired Army colonel from Decatur wrote personally, "I pulled strings to get your service records expedited. They're public now. Let the world see who you really are." Meanwhile, across town in a modest ranch house in Marietta, Ryan Thompson paced his living room. The television was off, but his phone wouldn't stop vibrating. His union rep had called twice, advising him to say nothing. A buddy from the academy texted, "Hang in there, man. This'll blow over." Another message from someone he hadn't spoken to in years. "You really arrested a Purple Heart vet for standing in a parking lot? Bro." Ryan deleted them all. He opened his laptop and searched his own name. The results were brutal: headlines, opinion pieces, viral threads dissecting every second of the body cam footage. One prominent civil rights attorney tweeted, "This isn't an isolated incident, it's a pattern. Officer Thompson has 14 complaints in 5 years, mostly for improper stops and use of force on black residents. Time for accountability." Ryan slammed the laptop shut. He walked to the garage, lifted the barbell off the rack, and started bench pressing, reps, sets, sweat dripping, trying to drown out the noise in his head. But every time he paused to breathe, the image returned. The old man's calm face, the slow turn, the cuffs clicking. He told himself he'd followed procedure. He told himself he'd kept the streets safe. Yet the justification felt thinner with every passing hour. At the precinct, Captain Morales convened a small task force. Sergeant Lisa Carter was on it, along with 2 investigators from Internal Affairs and a liaison from the city's Office of Professional Standards. They pulled every stop Ryan had made in the last 18 months. The pattern emerged quickly: disproportionate contacts with black and brown drivers and pedestrians, especially after dark. Verbal warnings that escalated when someone questioned authority. A handful of use of force incidents cleared internally, but now looking questionable under fresh scrutiny. One file stood out: a traffic stop 2 years earlier involving a black college student who'd asked why he was being pulled over. Ryan's bodycam audio captured him saying, "Because I said so." That's why. The student was ticketed for a broken taillight that later turned out to be working fine. The complaint had been dismissed. Lisa looked up from the screen. "This isn't about one bad night, this is who he is on patrol." Morales nodded. "Then we prove it, and we end it." By late afternoon, the mayor's office issued a statement. "The city of Atlanta is deeply troubled by the events depicted in the released footage. We are cooperating fully with the ongoing investigation and have requested a review by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to ensure transparency and impartiality." The GBI accepted the case within the hour. That night, a candlelight vigil formed outside the precinct. Not angry, not shouting, just quiet people holding signs that read "Honor our veterans" and "Justice for Marcus" and "No more profiling." Simone stood near the front, arm around her father. Marcus hadn't wanted to come, but she'd insisted. They're here for you, Daddy. Let them see you're still standing. He wore his old army cap, the one with the faded patch. People approached slowly, one by one, handshakes, hugs, quiet words. A young veteran in a wheelchair rolled up. I just wanted to say thank you for what you did over there. And I'm sorry for what they did here. Marcus bent down, placed a hand on the man's shoulder. We keep going, he said. That's all we can do. The crowd grew to several hundred. Phones recorded everything. The footage of Marcus, among them tall, limping slightly, but head high, spread faster than the arrest video had. Comments rolled in by the thousands. This man deserves respect, not cuffs. He fought for us. Now we fight for him. Atlanta, do better. Back in his bungalow, Marcus sat with Simone on the porch swing Ella had loved. Crickets chirped in the dark. She rested her head on his shoulder. You know this is bigger than one cop now, right? He nodded slowly. I know, but I just want it to be over. It will be, she promised. And when it is, they'll remember your name, not his. Across the city, in the silence of his garage, Ryan Thompson finished his last set and let the barbell clang to the floor. He stared at the concrete, breathing hard. For the first time, a small crack appeared in the certainty he'd carried for years. Not regret exactly, not yet, but doubt, and doubt once planted grows fast. The next morning, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation agents arrived at the precinct. They requested Ryan's personnel file, his cruiser logs, every body cam upload from the past 2 years. The machine was turning, slowly, deliberately, inexorably, and Marcus Johnson, the quiet janitor who never asked for the spotlight, was at its center. What do you think should happen to Officer Thompson next? Write justice in the comments if you believe accountability is coming for Marcus. Share your thoughts. Let's keep this conversation going. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation agents arrived at the Atlanta PD headquarters just after sunrise on the third day. 2 men and 1 woman in plain clothes, briefcases in hand, badges clipped to belts. They were greeted by Captain Morales in a small conference room on the 3rd floor. No windows, just fluorescent lights and the faint smell of burnt coffee. She handed over 3 thick binders without preamble. Ryan Thompson's complete personnel file, every incident report from his shifts in the last 36 months, and a preliminary analysis from internal affairs showing the demographic breakdown of his stops. Black and brown individuals made up 78% of his field contacts, despite comprising 54% of the patrol zone's population. The numbers stared back like an accusation. Lead Agent Marcus Hale, tall, bald, with a voice like gravel, flipped through the first binder. We'll need access to the full CAD system, body cam archives, and dash cam footage for every stop he's made since he pinned on. No redactions, Morales nodded. Already compiling, you'll have it by end of day. Across the city, in a sunlit conference room at a downtown civil rights firm, attorney Lena Washington reviewed the same body cam clip for the 3rd time that morning. She was in her late 40s, sharp eyes behind thin frames, braids pulled back tight. Her firm had taken Marcus's case pro bono the moment the GoFundMe hit $20,000. She paused the video at the exact second Ryan said, "That's enough reason." She turned to her paralegal. Find every case in Georgia where standing alone at night was ruled insufficient for a Terry stop. Cross-reference with 4th Amendment challenges. We're building a motion to suppress if this ever goes criminal, which it shouldn't, but more importantly, we're laying groundwork for the civil suit. Back on Peach Street, Marcus sat on his porch with Simone and a lawyer from the firm who'd driven over unannounced. The lawyer, a young white man named Ethan Cole, spoke gently. Mr. Johnson, the city will likely offer a settlement soon, 5, maybe 6 figures, to make this go away quietly. But we can push for more. Policy changes, mandatory retraining, public apology, and we can name Thompson personally in the suit if you want. Marcus sipped his coffee, staring at the azaleas Ella had planted years ago. I don't want his money. I want to know it won't happen to the next man who looks like me. Ethan nodded. Then we go for structural change. The video is our leverage. That afternoon, the first major news outlet ran an in-depth piece. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution headline read, "Pattern of stops. Records show officer in viral arrest targeted black residents disproportionately." The article listed specifics: 14 complaints over 5 years, 8 involving black men, 4 resulting in use of force, all cleared, 2 settled out of court for undisclosed amounts. A former partner of Ryan's, speaking anonymously, said, "He always said he could spot trouble a mile away. Trouble usually meant someone who didn't look like him." The story quoted community leaders. Reverend Jamal Hayes from Mount Zion Baptist called it the latest chapter in a long book of mistrust. A local NAACP chapter president demanded Thompson's firing. Even the police union issued a cautious statement. "We support due process for all officers and urge the public to await the full investigation." Ryan Thompson did not leave his house that day. Curtains drawn, phone off, he sat at his kitchen table with a legal pad, trying to write a statement for his union rep. Every sentence started strong and fell apart. "I was acting in good faith. The subject's refusal left me no choice. The words looked hollow even on paper. He crumpled the sheet, tossed it toward the trash, missed. He opened his laptop again, scrolled through the comments under the AJC article. Thousands of them, most were angry. A few defended him. Cops have a tough job. He was just doing his duty, but they were drowned out. One comment stopped him cold. My dad was a cop for 30 years. He taught me you don't cuff a man for asking why. You explain, you de-escalate, you respect. This isn't policing, this is ego. He closed the laptop. For the first time since the arrest, he felt something close to shame, not the burning kind, but a slow, cold weight in his gut. He thought about his own father, a retired state trooper who drilled into him. The badge isn't a free pass. It's a responsibility. Ryan had always believed he lived that. Now the mirror showed something different. By evening, the pressure had mounted enough that the police chief held a press conference. Cameras flashed as he stood at the podium in dress blues. The Atlanta Police Department takes these allegations seriously. Officer Thompson remains on administrative leave. The GBI is conducting an independent review. We are committed to transparency and to rebuilding trust with every community we serve. He paused, looked directly into the lens. Mr. Johnson is a respected veteran and longtime resident. What happened that night does not reflect our values. We are reviewing all policies related to pedestrian stops and will implement changes as needed. The words were measured, but the subtext was clear. The department was distancing itself. Fast. That night, a larger vigil formed outside City Hall, hundreds then 1,000, candles flickered in paper cups, signs glowed under streetlights. Veterans deserve respect. End racial profiling now. Marcus is us. A gospel choir from a nearby church sang, "Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around." Marcus and Simone stood near the back, half hidden in the crowd. He wore a plain jacket, ball cap pulled low. People recognized him anyway, quiet nods, soft words of encouragement. A little girl, maybe 7, walked up holding a drawing. A stick-figure soldier with a medal labeled Mr. Marcus Hero. She handed it to him without a word. Marcus knelt, accepted it, folded it carefully into his pocket. His eyes were wet, but he didn't let the tears fall. Simone squeezed his arm. "See, you're not alone in this." He looked out at the sea of faces, black, white, young, old, some in uniform from other agencies showing solidarity. "I never wanted to be the face of anything," he said. "But if it means something changes, maybe it's worth it." Across town, in a dimly lit bar far from O'Malley's, a group of off-duty officers gathered. Some knew Ryan, some didn't. Conversation stayed low. One sergeant, a black man who'd worked the same zone for 15 years, spoke up. "Thompson crossed a line we all know not to cross. You don't arrest a man for existing, especially not a vet. Especially not like that." Heads nodded slowly. No one defended Ryan, not tonight. The GBI agents worked late, cross-referencing stops with census data, complaint logs, even social media posts from community watch groups. They found more, a 2024 stop where Ryan detained a black delivery driver for looking around suspiciously while waiting for a customer. The man had been held 20 minutes, searched, released with no citation. Another. A black teenager walking home from basketball practice stopped because he fit a description. The description, young male in hoodie, no further details. Agent Hale leaned back in his chair at 1 a.m. rubbing his eyes. "This isn't one bad apple, it's a branch that's been rotting for years." His partner nodded. "And the department let it happen." The next morning, the GBI issued subpoenas for Ryan's phone records and personal emails related to work. They requested interviews with every officer who'd ridden with him. The net was tightening. Marcus woke to the smell of bacon, Simone cooking breakfast. He sat at the table, the little girl's drawing propped against his coffee mug. He looked at it for a long time, then he said quietly, "I think I'm ready to talk to the press just once, let them hear it from me." Simone smiled. "Whatever you need, Daddy." The machine kept turning. And with every turn, the truth grew louder. "What would you say if you could speak directly to Officer Thompson right now? Write accountability in the comments if you think the full truth needs to come out. No excuses, no half measures. Let's hear your thoughts." The press conference Marcus agreed to was held the next afternoon on the steps of City Hall, under a sky heavy with the threat of rain. Reporters clustered like birds on a wire, microphones extended, cameras rolling. Marcus stood at the podium in a simple button-down shirt and slacks, his army cap in his hands rather than on his head. Simone flanked him on one side, attorney Lena Washington on the other. He cleared his throat once, looked out at the faces, some familiar from the vigils, others strangers with notepads and skeptical eyes. "I'm not here to make speeches," he began, voice steady but soft. "I'm a janitor, a veteran, a father. A grandfather. I've lived in Atlanta my whole life, served this country overseas, and tried to do right by my neighbors. That night I was just going home after work. I asked a question, a fair one I think. And I ended up in handcuffs." He paused, letting the words settle. Cameras clicked. I don't hate the officer who arrested me, I don't even know him, but what happened wasn't right. It's happened to too many folks who look like me and it needs to stop. Not for me, for the next person, for my grandkids, for yours. He nodded once, stepped back, no more words. The simplicity hit harder than any rant could have. Lena stepped forward. Today we're filing a federal civil rights lawsuit against the city of Atlanta and Officer Ryan Thompson individually. We allege violations of Mr. Johnson's 4th and 14th Amendment rights, including unlawful detention and racial profiling. We're seeking damages, but more importantly, injunctive relief, mandatory body cam audits, de-escalation training focused on bias, and independent oversight for all pedestrian stops. She held up a thick folder. We have evidence of a pattern: disproportionate stops, unsubstantiated arrests. This isn't isolated, it's systemic. The questions came fast. Mr. Johnson, do you want Officer Thompson fired? What damages are you seeking? Has the city reached out? Marcus answered one. I want fairness for everyone. Then he walked away, Simone's hand on his elbow. The clip of his statement went viral within minutes, shared by celebrities, politicians, even a few late-night hosts. Comments flooded. This man's humility is everything. Suing for change, not cash. Respect. Atlanta, fix this. In the GBI's temporary office space downtown, agents pored over the new subpoenas. Ryan's phone records showed texts to colleagues after shifts. Another one tonight: suspicious loitering. Kept an eye on that group near the bar. Cross-referenced with logs, many match stops involving black men. One email from 2 years back to a supervisor requesting transfer to higher crime zones, tired of the suburbs. The zones he wanted, predominantly minority neighborhoods. Agent Hale circled it in red. Intent, he said. His partner, Agent Maria Soto, nodded. And opportunity. They interviewed Ryan's former partners that day. One, a veteran cop named Derek Mills, sat across the table in a plain gray suit, looking uncomfortable. Thompson was intense, always the first to roll up on someone, said it was instinct. Hale leaned in. Did he ever mention race? Mills hesitated. Not outright, but he'd joke about usual suspects. I called him on it once. He laughed it off, Soto made a note. And the arrests ever seem unwarranted? Mills sighed. A few, like the vet, no reason really, just because he could. By late afternoon, the agents had enough for a preliminary report. They scheduled Ryan's interview for the next morning. His union rep advised him over the phone, answer direct, no elaborations, stick to policy. Ryan hung up, stared at the wall. Sleep didn't come that night. He replayed every stop in his head, not just Marcus's, but the others. The college kid with the taillight, the delivery driver, the teenager in the hoodie. Each one started the same: a hunch, a demand, compliance, or cuffs. He'd always walked away feeling justified. Now the doubt had roots, twisting deeper. The lawsuit filing made national news that evening. CNN ran a segment, Vietnam vet sues Atlanta PD over viral arrest. They interviewed experts, a constitutional law professor who called it textbook profiling, a former cop-turned-reformer who said, this officer's record screams bias. The Chiron scrolled. Lawsuit seeks policy overhaul. Social media exploded anew. Number sue for change trended. Donations to the GoFundMe surged past 50,000. O'Malley's bar turned into a de facto headquarters, people dropping off more cards, more food. Patrick hung Marcus's framed Purple Heart photo behind the counter, donated by a veteran who'd served in the same division. Simone fielded calls all night, offers from book agents, tell your dad's story, podcast hosts, we'd love to have him on. Marcus shook his head at everyone. I'm not a celebrity, I clean floors. But he did agree to one thing, a meeting with the mayor's office. It was set for the following week, mediated by Lena. They want to settle early, she said, before discovery buries them. At dawn, Ryan drove to the GBI office. He wore civilian clothes, jeans, polo shirt, badge long gone. The interview room was stark, table, chairs, recorder. Agents Hale and Soto sat opposite, his rep beside him. Hale started easy, walk us through the night of the arrest. Ryan recited the facts: patrol, lot, approach, request, refusal, cuffs. Soto interjected, why that lot? No calls for service. Ryan shifted. Routine check, areas had issues. Hale slid over a map, no reports in 6 months. Why him specifically? Ryan paused. He was alone after hours. Soto. You didn't run his plates first. No, Hale, 14 complaints in 5 years, all but 2 against black suspects. Coincidence? Ryan's rep leaned in. My client, but Ryan spoke. I followed my training. The words sounded weak even to him. The questions dug deeper, past stops, texts, emails. By the end, Ryan's hands shook slightly under the table. As he left, Hale said quietly, we'll be in touch. Outside, rain finally broke, fat drops on the windshield as Ryan sat in his car, engine off. For the first time, he whispered to himself, what if I was wrong? That night, another vigil, smaller but no less fervent, outside the precinct. Protesters chanted softly, no justice, no peace. Marcus watched from home on the news, Simone beside him. They're fighting for you, she said. He nodded. And for themselves. The GBI report leaked 2 days later, partial but damning. Headlines screamed, "Systemic bias confirmed in Atlanta PD probe." The chief announced expanded training, early retirements for some. But for Ryan, the writing was on the wall. His rep called, "They're recommending termination and possible charges, false arrest, civil rights violation." Ryan didn't respond. He just hung up, walked to his garage, and stared at the weights he hadn't touched in days. Marcus, meanwhile, volunteered at the VA center as usual, helped a young vet with PTSD paperwork, listened to his story. At the end, the kid said, "I saw you on TV, you're a legend." Marcus chuckled, "Nah, just old." But inside, a small pride bloomed, not for the attention, but for the change it might bring. The rain cleared by morning, leaving Atlanta washed clean. But the storm wasn't over, not yet. If this story has you fired up about real change, write "change" now in the comments to show support for Marcus and others like him. What reforms do you think policing needs? Share below, your voice matters. The disciplinary hearing for Officer Ryan Thompson was scheduled for a crisp morning 2 weeks after the GBI's preliminary report leaked. It took place in a nondescript municipal building downtown, the kind with scuffed linoleum floors and humming vending machines in the lobby. Reporters crowded the hallway outside the closed-door session, but only a handful were allowed in. Union reps, department brass, the GBI agents, and witnesses. Ryan arrived early, dressed in an ill-fitting suit he'd last worn to a cousin's wedding. His face was gaunt, eyes shadowed from sleepless nights. He sat at a long table with his rep, staring at the water glass in front of him, condensation beading like sweat. Captain Morales opened the proceedings, her voice echoing slightly in the room. This hearing is to determine if Officer Thompson's actions violated department policy, state law, and federal civil rights statutes. Evidence includes body cam footage, stop logs, complaints, and the GBI investigation. She nodded to Agent Hale, who stood and presented the findings methodically. Charts projected on a screen, disproportionate stops by race, unsubstantiated detentions, patterns of escalation when authority was questioned. In Mr. Johnson's case, Hale said, there was no probable cause, no articulable suspicion. The arrest was unlawful. Ryan's rep argued procedure. Officer Thompson believed he was acting within guidelines. The refusal to identify justified the response. But the board, a mix of civilians and retired officers, leaned forward when witnesses spoke. Derek Mills, the former partner, repeated his interview statements. He targeted certain people, it wasn't random. A civil rights expert testified remotely. This fits classic profiling, implicit bias turning into explicit action. Then came the video. They played it in full, the room silent except for the tinny audio of Ryan's demands and Marcus's calm refusals. When it was Ryan's turn, he spoke haltingly. I thought he might be a threat, alone at night. I was protecting the community." A board member, an older black woman named Dr. Elaine Foster, interjected. "Protecting from what? An elderly veteran going home?" Ryan had no answer. His eyes flicked to the door as if expecting escape. By the end, he added quietly, "If I overstepped, I apologize." But the words landed flat, unconvincing. The hearing adjourned for deliberation. Outside, Ryan avoided the cameras, slipping out a side exit. In his car, he gripped the wheel, knuckles white. The crack of doubt had become a chasm. Memories flooded. His father's lessons ignored, assumptions unchallenged, a career built on quick judgments now crumbling. Word leaked fast, the board's recommendation: termination with prejudice, no pension eligibility, referral to the DA for possible misdemeanor charges like false imprisonment. The chief approved it that afternoon. By evening, it was official. Headlines blared, Atlanta officer fired over viral vet arrest. The union grumbled but didn't appeal. Public reaction was swift. Cheers online, more donations to Marcus's fund, editorials praising the speed. One columnist wrote, "This isn't just about one cop, it's a signal, bias has consequences." Marcus learned of the firing from Simone, who burst into the kitchen waving her phone. "They got him, Daddy." Fired, he was at the sink washing dishes from lunch, a simple meal of sandwiches and tea. He dried his hands slowly, sat at the table. "Fired?" She nodded, reading the statement aloud. "The Atlanta PD has terminated Officer Ryan Thompson following a thorough review. We apologize to Mr. Johnson and the community for this failure." Marcus stared at the window, where sunlight filtered through lace curtains Ella had sewn. "I didn't want him ruined, just accountable." Simone hugged him. "He is now, and you're the reason." The mayor's office called an hour later. The settlement conference was moved up. In a sleek boardroom the next day, city attorneys faced Lena Washington across a polished table. Marcus sat quietly, Simone beside him. The offer, $250,000 personal compensation plus $100,000 to a veteran's charity of his choice. But the real wins were structural, new policies. mandatory bias training annually, civilian review for all stops, body cam spot checks, a public dashboard tracking demographics of arrests. The mayor himself would issue an apology at a press event. Lena pushed for more, add de-escalation protocols specifically for veterans and elderly residents. They agreed. Marcus signed after a long pause, his signature steady despite the limp in his leg mirroring a tremble in his heart. That night, O'Malley's hosted a celebration, free drinks for vets, live music, a banner reading "Justice for Mark." The bar overflowed with well-wishers. Patrick pulled Marcus behind the counter for a photo, the Purple Heart frame glowing under lights. Regulars toasted, to old Mark, the hero who cleaned up more than floors. Marcus smiled, genuine but weary. A young reporter approached for a quote. How do you feel now that he's fired? Marcus thought a moment. Relieved, not happy, but relieved that maybe next time someone pauses before they assume. Ryan, meanwhile, cleared out his locker at the precinct under escort. Colleagues avoided eye contact. He loaded boxes into his truck, uniforms, boots, a faded photo of his academy class. Driving home, he passed billboards for the VA center where Marcus volunteered. He pulled over suddenly, engine idling. For the first time, he searched Marcus's name on his phone. Articles popped up. The Purple Heart story, dragging comrades through mud under fire, quiet life of service. Ryan read them all, face illuminated by the screen. Shame burned now, hot and undeniable. He whispered to the empty cab, "What the hell did I do?" The DA's office announced no criminal charges the next day, insufficient for prosecution, but the civil suit would proceed against him personally. His savings would take the hit. Job prospects dimmed, no department wanted the viral cop. Friends distanced. Family called, concerned but awkward. In the quiet of his living room, Ryan finally faced it. The arrest wasn't about safety. It was about control, about seeing threat where none existed, about skin color shaping suspicion. It was racist, plain, and ugly. The realization didn't absolve him, but it started something, maybe therapy, maybe advocacy someday. But for now, it just hurt. Atlanta buzzed with the news. Vigils turned to forums, community meetings on reform, police attending awkwardly but listening. Marcus spoke at one, brief as always. We all deserve dignity. Let's build that, applause thundered. Pride swelled in the crowd for the gentle giant who'd stood firm, sympathy for the man who'd endured needless humiliation, pity for the years he'd given only to face this. And for Ryan, a grim satisfaction that justice had caught up, that the system, flawed as it was, had worked this time. The mayor's apology came the following week, public and televised. But before that, loose ends tied. The GoFundMe closed at $150,000, split between legal fees and the VA. Marcus returned to work at O'Malley's, mopping floors with the same quiet efficiency. Life resumed but changed, neighbors waved more, strangers thanked him in stores. He limped a bit less, head a bit higher, yet the story wasn't done. One final twist waited. If you're rooting for full justice in this tale, write victory in the comments to celebrate Marcus's strength and the system's rare win. What do you think the final twist should be? Tell us below. Let's wrap this provocatively. The mayor's apology press conference unfolded on a bright Saturday morning in front of City Hall, the steps lined with flags fluttering in a gentle breeze. A podium stood center stage, flanked by department brass in dress uniforms and community leaders in suits and ties. The crowd swelled to over 1,000, neighbors, veterans, activists, families with kids on shoulders. Marcus arrived in a modest sedan driven by Simone, wearing the same button-down from his own statement, his Purple Heart pinned to the lapel for the first time in years. He walked the short distance with his limp head high, waving off offers of help. Reporters parted like a sea as he approached the front row reserved for him. Whispers rippled. That's him, the real hero. Mayor Carla Jenkins, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with a reputation for tough talk on reform, stepped to the mic first. Today, we acknowledge a wrong and commit to righting it. She detailed the settlement. The funds, the policies, the training. Then, turning to Marcus, she said, Mr. Johnson, on behalf of the city of Atlanta, I apologize for the actions of Officer Thompson and for the systemic failures that allowed this to happen. You served our nation with valor and we failed to serve you with respect. That ends now. Applause thundered. Marcus stood, shook her hand firmly. No speech from him, just a nod, a quiet thank you. But his eyes, crinkled with that familiar kindness, spoke volumes. The crowd chanted his name softly at first, then louder. Marcus, Marcus. Pride swelled in every chest for the man who'd faced down fire in Vietnam and bias at home, sympathy for the needless ordeal he'd endured, pity for the quiet life disrupted but unbroken. As the event wrapped, a surprise unfolded, the final twist. The governor's office had been watching. A representative stepped forward with a proclamation, Marcus Johnson Day in Georgia, to honor veterans of color who'd served despite discrimination. And more, a full honor guard from the local VFW presented him with a new flag folded crisply from the state capitol. For your service then and your courage now, the commander said. Marcus accepted it, voice thick. This is for all of us who came back and kept fighting. Tears flowed freely in the crowd, vets saluting, kids wide-eyed, strangers hugging. Social media lit up. Clips of the moment shared millions of times, comments pouring in. This man deserves the world. Finally, some real justice. The GoFundMe already closed inspired copycats for other wronged vets. O'Malley's planned a permanent plaque. In honor of Marcus Johnson, hero, friend, fighter. Ryan Thompson watched it all from his living room, television muted, subtitles crawling across the screen. He'd been served papers for the civil suit that morning, personal liability, no department shield. His house felt empty, echoes of his pacing the only sound. The firing had stripped his identity, the apology stripped his denial. He opened his laptop, typed a letter he'd been drafting for days. Not to Marcus, not yet, but to himself, admissions of bias, regrets for lives impacted, a pledge to learn. He hit print, folded it, set it on the table. Then he called a therapist's number a friend had slipped him weeks ago. "I need help," he said when they answered. It was a start, small, private, but the fall was complete. No badge, no excuses, just a man facing the mirror. Satisfaction rippled through those who'd followed the story. The cop had gotten his due, the racism exposed and punished, a lesson etched in public record. Back on Peach Street that evening, Marcus sat on his porch with Simone, the new flag draped over the railing. Neighbors stopped by with pie, stories, thanks. Jimmy from the bar brought a six-pack, on the house, hero. Rosa hugged him tight. "You changed things, Mark." He waved it off with a chuckle, but inside a warmth spread, the pride of endurance, the sympathy earned through quiet strength, the pity transformed into inspiration. His grandkids called via video, beaming. "We saw you on TV, Grandpa, you're famous." He laughed, the sound rich and free. "Nah, just lucky to have y'all." As night fell, Atlanta's lights twinkled like stars, reforms rolled out. First training sessions packed, the dashboard going live with transparent stats. Complaints dropped in Thompson's old zone, trust inched up. Marcus returned to mopping floors at O'Malley's, but now with volunteers helping, patrons tipping extra. Life wasn't perfect, bias lingered in corners, but for one man, one city, justice had triumphed. The elderly veteran who'd stood alone in a parking lot now stood as a symbol, dignity unbreakable, change possible. And in the quiet suburbs, Ryan Thompson began his own journey, attending meetings on racial equity, volunteering anonymously at a community center. Redemption? Maybe. But the story closed with Marcus's victory, the good man uplifted, the wrongdoer humbled. Fairness, finally. If this epic tale of justice moved you, write triumph in the comments to honor Marcus's unbreakable spirit. What's your takeaway from this story? Does it give you hope for change? Share below and let's discuss the real-world impact.